Time now for the electric moment of the series presented by PC Richard & Son, and no moment was bigger in Mets Rockies than Francisco Lindor coming off the bench, fractured pinky toe and all, a go-ahead two-run double in the ninth inning on Friday night to help the Mets earn a 4-2 victory. You go back to the start of 2024, no one in baseball has more game-tying or go-ahead RBI in the ninth inning or later than our shortstop, Francisco Lindor, who gets it done yet again on Friday night in Colorado. That is the PC Richard & Son electric moment of the series. Welcome to Meet at the Apple, presented by PC Richard & Son. I'm Jonathan Barron. Joining me once again in for Vito Calisi is Hunter Tabs. You can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram at JMB9191. You can follow Hunter at Hunter Tabs. You can follow this podcast on Apple, Spotify, on the Mets YouTube page. And boy, oh boy, Hunter, I mean, where do we begin? The Mets close out their 7-game road trip in style by completing a 3-game sweep against the Colorado Rockies. And I'm going to start by saying this. Apologize for absolutely nothing, because there are a couple teams chasing the Mets in this National League East, especially one that had a pretty advantageous matchup this weekend, came away without a victory. And we say it here on the podcast all the time. Every single major league team, every single major league player, every single major league at bat, guys are hungry, guys have things to prove. And for the Mets to go and take care of business, Hunter, in Colorado this weekend, go 5-2 on the 7-game road trip, that is what great teams do. They sweep the Colorado Rockies in the 6 games. They took care of business against the White Sox. They do exactly what they had to do, and they come back to Citi Field ready for a big 6-game homestand. Hunter, your thoughts?
Yeah, overall, this team is rolling. You know, Friday night we saw just a couple of clutch moments, but then Saturday and Sunday, just domination. You know, offense was firing on all cylinders. Pitching was hot. Defense was hot, making the plays. Just all around, just exactly what the New York Mets, who view themselves as this championship contender, this division contender, had to do against a Colorado Rockies team who we all know struggles. But like you said, they have some major league talent on there. You know, Chase Dollander, who started for the Rockies on Sunday, he was a first-round pick. He was lights out in college for Tennessee. He was, you know, one of the highest regarded pitching prospects in baseball. And, you know, they took care of him early in his career. He hasn't necessarily been what he's, you know, supposed to, but still, that's an electric arm. And just overall, the Mets took care of business. They did what they have to do. You have to play the games on your schedule, who you're playing against, but they did exactly that. They didn't, you know, you see sometimes good to average teams will stoop down to their opponent's level, right? We didn't see that this weekend. We just saw one really, really good, talented, balanced baseball team take care of business when they absolutely had to.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you mentioned Saturday, Sunday, the offensive outbursts, the kind of performances you expect to see from a big offense like the Mets at Chase Field. Friday was really that interesting game where the Mets found themselves in a couple precarious situations. No more precarious than the 8th inning, a bases loaded, no out situation, where after Brett Baty and his misplay hurt the Mets on Thursday in Los Angeles, had that line drive hit right at him, and he makes the heads-up play to get the second out at third base. Of course, Ryan Stanek gets out of that jam, and the Mets go on to win that game. Mets don't homer on Friday, but they find a way to pull that game out. That's the kind of game right there that I think a very good team against a very bad team, given all that happened in that game, the Mets struggles with RISP, a lot of other pitfalls of theirs, still find a way to win that game. A not-so-great team finds ways to lose that game. So we learned that the Mets are finding different ways, even if, let's say, the big boppers are not coming through necessarily, although Pete Alonso, of course, had the big 2-run double in that game. The Mets trailed 1-0 before Pete gave the Mets the lead in the 7th inning. And as we do in every series, Hunter, we continue to learn more and more about this Mets team. So let's get into what we learned in this 3-game series against the Colorado Rockies. And I think it starts with Juan Soto, who reached base safely 6 times on Sunday afternoon. It was the first time Soto has done that in his big league career. 3 hits, 3 walks. He had a couple of 3-hit games in this series. He is now 9 hits shy of 1,000 for his big league career. He also became the first Met to reach safely 6 times in a game since Pete Alonso, ironically, all the way back in Pete's brilliant rookie season of 2019. Jeff McNeil is an absolute force to be reckoned with. This is a guy the Mets lineup really missed when Jeff was on the shelf to start the season. But as we all know, he had a huge weekend series in Colorado, 5 hits, including 3 home runs and a double. Jeff continues to slug. And if you go back to the start of the second half in 2024, Jeff McNeil, Hunter, is slashing 275, 366, 541 with 13 home runs and 273 plate appearances, Hunter. That is an average. If you extrapolate that over 600 plate appearances, it's a 29 homer pace we're talking, Hunter. This is, as you and I both know, a damn good hitter.
Yeah, he is. And you know what? If he's going to start hitting homers, then this lineup is going to take off. And as we saw this Saturday and Sunday, 8 runs a game, 13 runs a game is legitimately could happen any single night. We know it has the possibilities to anyways with who's at the top of the lineup, those 3. But if Jeff McNeil is hitting homers at this rate, if Jeff McNeil is hitting doubles and driving in runs, then this offense is going to take off and could be one of the best offenses that the Mets have put together in their franchise's history. No question about it.
100%. I was thinking that before we got going, that this honestly could be one of the best offenses in Mets history. Another guy that we're going to talk about in a bit, Ronny Mauricio, the impact he's made. He had homers out of the 8 and 9 spot on Saturday night. But let's get back to what else we learned in this 3-game series. Something I think we knew, but was reinforced in a different way, and the legend just continues to grow. I'm talking about Francisco Lindor, who obviously sustained the fractured toe against Tony Gonsolin on Wednesday night in Los Angeles, did not play on Thursday, and on Friday night, with the Mets in a close ball game and a couple runners on base, Carlos Mendoza turned to his leader. Lindor goes up there in a pinch hit situation and laces a go-ahead 2-run double to help the Mets win that game on Friday. And then on Saturday, Francisco comes up with 3 hits, but not just 3 hits, a couple of stolen bases for the man who only has 9 healthy toes right now, Hunter. It is unbelievable. Francisco, including the go-ahead RBI he had on Friday night, now has 9 game-tying or go-ahead RBI in the 9th inning or later, dating back to the start of 2024. That is the most by any player in Major League Baseball, the epitome of clutch, Francisco Lindor.
Yeah, there is nothing else to say about him, whether it's his clutch at the late in games, whether it's in the field, whether it's driving in runs, stealing bases on a broken pinky toe. He is doing it all. There's nothing else you can ask of him. He's hitting, he's driving in runs, he's fielding, he's stealing bases, everything that we have seen at Francisco Lindor's best, in the second half of last year, from May through September of last year when he was probably at his best as a New York Met. That's what we're seeing now. And the fact that it's June 8th and we're getting this, and, it's not starting in mid-July or early August like it has Francisco Lindor's first couple of years as a Met, he's got the chance to have a really special full 162 or 160, due to the couple of missed games here and there. He's firing on all cylinders. Every single aspect of his game is just, could be one of the best, stretches of his career. Dare I say that? It's so exciting to watch. Every night he does something special. And Friday night, obviously, the big hit, the game-winning hit. And part of that, and I know we're backtracking a little bit, but it hasn't really felt like the Mets have stolen a game this year, right? When they're winning, they're blowing teams out. Or, it's the bullpen that's saving games late and it's a low-scoring affair. It hasn't really felt like they've had this crazy comeback too many times this year. Maybe the one against Toronto when Winker hit that late inning, the 8th inning 2-run triple. But they stole that game Friday night. And, of course, it was Alonso and Lindor. And, you just can't say enough about the two of them, especially, what Lindor's been doing all year, especially what Pete's been doing all year. And I know you have a entire spiel about Pete that you'd like to get into, so I'll stop talking and let you do that.
Yeah, I think the last thing we learned in this series, the Mets don't have just one MVP candidate. I think Francisco Lindor, of course, is an MVP type player with the just constant clutch moments he comes up with. But Pete Alonso is truly in position right now to become the first MVP winner in the history of the New York Mets. Right now, as we record this episode, after Sunday's victory, Pete Alonso ranks in the top 5 in the National League in home runs, RBI, batting average, and on-base percentage. And Pete Alonso, for all the issues the Mets have had as a team with runners in scoring position, it's well documented, although they kind of broke out of that a bit this weekend. Pete Alonso has had no such issue in those clutch situations. Mentioned the big go-ahead 2-run double on Friday night. Pete Alonso's OPSing over 1,200 with runners in scoring position this season. He is the cleanup hitter for the best team in the National League. He has done a great job defensively at first base. He plays every single day. He's always been a guy that posts, and he is having the best season of his big league career to this point. He has put the New York Mets on his back. I will say it again. Pete Alonso right now, for my money, for your money, I'm sure for many other people's money, and I think for a lot of the National League, or excuse me, the BBWAA Writers Association, their money, Pete Alonso is the National League MVP. I know that there's a guy named Ohtani in Los Angeles. First of all, this Mets team, at this very moment, better team than the Dodgers. I know the Dodgers have injury issues. I get that. We just saw the Mets go to LA, and they should have taken at least 3 out of 4. I'm not going to get greedy and say they should have swept them, although I could get greedy and say that. I'm not going to say that. They
John,
took
you can get
from them.
you can get greedy.
I don't want to
and
get
say
too greedy, Hunter. You know, I
they
don't want people in the comments roasting me.
They could have taken 7 if you really wanted to get greedy.
They truly, truly could have. But Pete Alonso being in the middle of this Mets lineup, he is the straw that stirs the drink. People talk about Juan Soto leaving the Bronx and coming to New York and not having the Aaron Judge protection. I'm not saying that Pete Alonso is, apples to apples Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is obviously one of the best players we've ever seen at this point. I think it's fair to say that. But Pete Alonso is giving Juan Soto all that Judge protection and more. And I tweeted this a couple days ago that you want to talk about Juan Soto and him being a difference maker. Pete Alonso now, I believe, is at 12 or 13 home runs. Now it's 13 with runners on base this season. He had just 14 last year. So teams are being patient, are being cautious with Juan Soto. Juan is being very patient himself. Like we mentioned, reached base 11 of 16 times in this Rockies series. Pete Alonso has made opposing teams pay for, at times, pitching around Juan Soto, the linchpin in this Mets lineup that is now 18 games over 500. I mean, if that's on MVP stuff, Hunter, I do not know what is.
Yeah, just real quick. He's been the best player on the best team. That's got to count for something in terms of MVP voting. I know, you could throw PCA up there. You could throw Corbin Carroll up there. Obviously, Ohtani. But if you're the best player on the best team, something tells me you should be finishing at the very top of the MVP finalists. And another thing on Pete, he would probably, I would think he would agree with this. This is the most complete we've seen him as a player at the major league level. He is driving in runs with scoring position, like you said. He's hitting, he's hitting well with 2 outs. He's hitting well late in games. He's driving in runs. He's hitting homers with runners on base. He's playing a really good first base. I know there were a couple miscues that were highlighted because they were in late games, but he's played a really solid first base for the Mets. He's bailed out a couple throws. He's, stretching backwards. He's stretching into the line. He's picking everything. This might be the most complete we have seen Pete Alonso as a major league player. It's really exciting. I'm sure Pete's really fired up about it. It's really cool because how of last season went, and it's no surprise. It's pretty well documented of some of his struggles. He has done everything that he was struggling with last year. He has done everything in reverse. He's driving in runs with runners in scoring position. He's hitting with 2 outs. He's walking more. He's not chasing. It's truly a complete package with Pete Alonso right now. It's just really exciting to watch him, hit forth. And I think this lineup construction with Lindor, Nimmo, Soto, Alonso's probably, it seems like they're going to roll with this. It's probably their best lineup going forward with those 4 at the top.
Yeah, I mean, credit Carlos Mendoza. Vito and I talked about it after the Boston series. The tweak that was made in the lineup, moving Soto to 3. It looks like right now it's the second straight season that Carlos Mendoza made a lineup tweak almost around the same exact time. It was May 18th last year. I think it was May 22nd this season. He made the lineup tweak, and it's paying dividends. Brandon Nimmo has been great. He moved Jeff McNeil up. Ronny Mauricio, like I mentioned, hitting ninth on Saturday, moving up in the lineup after his 456-foot blast. We'll talk a little bit more about Ronny Mauricio, but a couple more points on Pete Alonso and what he's doing to contextualize the historical nature of what Pete is doing.
Please.
On Sunday, his 23rd career multi-homer game, obviously all as member of the Mets. That passes Darryl Strawberry for the most multi-homer games in Mets history. Of course, he now has 243 career home runs. On Sunday, he passed David Wright to move into sole possession of second on the Mets all-time home runs list. That is not something to be taken lightly. Of course, David would have had a whole lot more if it weren't for the injuries that ultimately ended his career. But what an accomplishment for Pete Alonso to pass David Wright, of course, one of the 4 captains in Mets history. Will have his number retired in just about a month on a beautiful Saturday afternoon at Citi Field on July 19th. Pete now just 9 home runs shy of Darryl Strawberry's Mets home run record. The chase is on. The countdown is on. So exciting. And we were talking about this just 2 weeks ago. We looked ahead at the schedule to see when Pete was on pace to do it. At that point, he was pacing to do it. I think it was like late August. The Phillies come to town late August, and he was on a pace to do it right around then. Now with the home run barrage that Pete is on, and boy, oh boy, is he on a home run barrage. He's pretty much homering 1 every 4 games right now, 1 out of every 17-ish plate appearances. He is on pace, and of course, I think what I just said proves that these things can really drastically change in a heartbeat. But right now, Pete is on a pace to tie the record around the time the Angels come to town. That's right after David Wright weekend, 3rd week of July. And he's on pace to break it right around the time the Mets go to San Francisco. So it's coming. Pete Alonso is on an absolute tear. I'll give you one more, Hunter. Pete has 18 RBI in his last 8 games overall. That is tied with Francisco Lindor, Yoenis Cespedes, and Carlos Beltran, 3 of the best hitters in the history of this franchise for the most RBI over any 8-game span in club history. So Pete is as locked in as they come. And like I said, if he's not the NL MVP right now, I do not know who is. He has been fantastic. And you said it perfectly yourself. This is the best version we have ever seen of Pete Alonso. And that's saying a lot for a guy who already holds the Mets single season RBI record. And of course holds not just the Mets single season home run record, but the single season Major League Baseball rookie home run record. Pete currently leads Major League Baseball in RBI. I've said a whole lot about him. I don't know what more we can say about Pete Alonso other than 2 things. Number 1, he's our MVP. And number 2, vote Pete Alonso and all of his deserving teammates for the All-Star game, because if there was ever a first baseman who should be playing in Atlanta on All-Star Game Tuesday, it's not former Brave Freddie Freeman, who crossed his arms as he watched a 443-foot home run sail into the Los Angeles night, possibly thinking to himself, damn, that should be the NL starting first baseman right there. Hit that baseball. Man, I don't know who else it is. Vote Pete Alonso, vote Lindor, vote Soto, vote all the Mets. 18 games over 500, Hunter. This is, are we having fun or what?
I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun watching this team. It's been a late week for everyone. So Mets fans, we don't have this until last week of July, first week of August. Another, couple of 10 p.m. start.
Right?
San Diego, right? So I think the San Diego, San Francisco.
I saw a tweet, so I don't know who put it out there, but I was talking to Tricia about this, and she was on the money with this one. So the tweet was that the Dodgers series was the last time that we were going to have to deal with 10 o'clock starts. Technically, yeah, I guess that's right.
Like, we have like 9:45.
Saturday was 9:40. The Padres series is a bunch of 9:40 starts. It's the same thing.
Same thing. It's the same thing.
You're not getting to bed before 1 a.m. You're sleep deprived if you want to watch your Met baseball. Would you want to watch your Met baseball? Because they're the best team in Major League Baseball.
So I would say it's a long week. We have a nice homestand coming up. We have a couple East Coast road trips coming up, so we could all, get back on our sleeping patterns, which will be nice. But no, I have nothing else more to say about Pete Alonso other than he's just tearing the cover off the ball. He's picking it at first base, and he looks like the best version of himself that we've seen as Pete Alonso as a major leaguer.
A couple more notes from this series on the offensive side of things, and then we'll take a look at the pitching side of things. Number one, want to talk about Francisco Alvarez. A lot of chatter online. I think a little bit too much chatter. The thumbs have been firing off. Guys, put those thumbs down, because the same people who were critical of, let's say, Jeff McNeil, who is now tearing the cover off the ball, and like I said, really has been doing so since the All-Star break 2024. Of course, that fractured wrist he suffered on September 6th of last season was such a critical injury, such an unfortunate injury for Jeff and the Mets. Jeff was probably hitting his best since he had in 2022. Francisco Alvarez, 3 hits, a couple RBI, a home run, which I'm sure was great to see for Francisco to see the ball go over the fence. A couple things I want to point out about Francisco Alvarez. Number one, and I think a lot of people understand and recognize this and acknowledge this, he's 23 years old. That is an unusually young age for a major league catcher, especially for one to have as much major league experience as he has under his belt. That is not common, especially for one of, if not the most important positions on the diamond. Yes, Hunter.
John, he's younger than me, and you all make fun of me because
first, I don't make fun of you for your age. I'm not like that. I'm not, Hunter.
There are people that do. Francisco Alvarez is younger than me. He's 3 months younger than me. First of all, he was the first
context. That's good context.
He was the first guy that I was like, I'm a loser. Because he was the first guy that made his debut, starting and having success that was younger than me. But yeah, to put it in context, bad. Don't like it.
It's the worst feeling when you get old enough to the point that the players are younger than you. That's not good. It's nicer when you get to look up to them and they're all your idols.
Yeah.
Now your contemporaries.
Don't like it. But yeah, he's younger than me. Let's all remember that. He is 23 years old. He's going to be 24 in November. He's a former top 3 prospect in Major League Baseball. He still has a lot of power, and he throws out a decent amount of base runners for back there. The Friday night, he picked the ball that bounced like 2 feet in front of the plate and threw out, I forgot who it was. Now, of course, it's escaping me, but on the money, and McNeil made a great tag. Francisco Alvarez, nobody should be writing him off. I don't know why that's even a conversation. He is still a really, really talented baseball player. He hit that ball 450 feet. I don't care if it's in Colorado. I don't care if it's 1,000 feet above sea level. I don't care. He hit that ball 450 to dead center.
Easy power. It's easy power. Yep. The ball, I mean, you've been there. You've watched his BPs, spring training, where there's not a whole lot of noise around.
Explodes off the bat.
The ball sounds different coming off this kid's bat. So, I mean, Hunter put it perfectly. I didn't even expect you to say that, pointing out that he's younger than you. That's a great point right there. The second point to make about Francisco Alvarez is this is a kid who has dealt with 2 really tough left hand injuries. Last year, the ligament injury that the Mets had to perform surgery on. And this year, the hamate bone, which is an injury that saps power. I mean, there's some precedent for this. Giancarlo Stanton has dealt with this injury. Mike Trout's dealt with this injury. Both those guys, immediately after their return, saw their powers number diminish a little bit. It's the same injury that Francisco Alvarez suffered this spring, and it's his left hand. So that is the hand he is using to catch 96, 97, Edwin Diaz fastballs. And also, as a righty hitter, it's his bottom hand on the bat. So you can understand that there is a bit of a healing process, I think. He came back relatively quickly, but 2 pretty tough hand injuries for a young catcher. Let's not discount those 2 as well. I'm not trying to make excuses for Francisco Alvarez here, but this is a kid with a whale of talent and a whale of a prospect. And I think that, you look at the Mets' struggles with RISP, and it's been frustrating at times. I'm sure the guys in the clubhouse tell you the same thing. And you look at some individuals who have struggled at times this year as well. Francisco Alvarez being one of them. Mark Vientos has struggled this year. You consider all of these things, and you take a look at the standings, which I'm going to do right now. And look, I am not here to dance on graves. I am absolutely not here to do that. The Nope, not me. The 2021 Atlanta Braves, they struggled. Obviously, we know how that story ended. 2022, the Mets had a huge lead over the Braves, and the Phillies know how that story ended. So I'm not here for that. But you right now look at the National League standings. First of all, the Mets have a 4.5 game lead over the Phillies. Mets go to Philly in 2 weeks from now. That'll be, that will be a pivotal series. I'll be there Friday night.
Let's go.
They are 14 games up on the Atlanta Braves. The Mets,
that is more than 10 and a half.
Have 3 fewer losses than the Los Angeles Dodgers at this point, and they have 2 more wins and 1 fewer loss than the Chicago Cubs, with, again, a struggling Alvarez, a struggling Vientos, struggles with runners in scoring position, and the Mets are still in this incredible position now, coming home to face a Nationals team that's offense is struggling, and then the Tampa Bay Rays over the weekend. So just wanted to point that out because I tweeted this after Tyler McGill completed his start in Los Angeles on Tuesday night. A lot of people were unhappy with the first inning, and then he cruised the rest of the way, completed 6 innings. A lot of tweets out there to delete.
They play 9 innings. They play 9 innings.
They play 9 innings, correct. I think that there's a lot of Francisco Alvarez tweets out there that some are going to want back. So, guys, here's a fair warning. Maybe a little head start to start deleting those Francisco Alvarez tweets because you're going to want to scrub that from the internet. Francisco Alvarez, incredibly talented ball player, generational type pop from off the bat, and you know it's coming, just like we're seeing from Jeff McNeil right now.
Yeah, John, if you want, we could do an activity where me and you go and find those bad Alvarez takes when, he starts hitting bombs into the second deck of Citi Field and ends the season with, 18, 19, 20 homers. I think that'd be a fun activity. So we could save that. We could shelve that for another time.
Hunter's petty. Hunter's very petty.
A little bit. I just don't like when people don't own up to saying stuff that they were wrong about. That's all.
People like to dig in. I put a tweet out there today about Jeff McNeil, and I felt like it was time that Jeff McNeil gets the roses he deserves because not only is he an incredibly talented hitter, he never strikes out. He's always hitting the ball hard. A couple nights ago, he hooked one down the line with runners on base that just hooked foul, wound up making the final out of the inning. I could read his lips to what he said to Antoine Richardson, and he was frustrated. Saturday night before he hits the home run, he just got jammed by German Marquez. Off the bat, it looked like it was gone. I was this close to getting my phone out to text you, Hunter, and say, good hitter, but it wound up dying in right field, and of course, he winds up homering on Saturday in his next at-bat after that near home run, and then 2 homers on Sunday. Let's talk about Ronny Mauricio and that piano being lifted off his back on Friday night when he doubled the other way. Coors Field being the only ballpark to hold that 400-foot opposite field double. But for Ronny, I'm sure it was such a breath of relief. His first major league hit since October 1st, 2023. Obviously, such a treacherous long road back to the majors for Ronny Mauricio, getting an opportunity after not just the surgery, but some setbacks, and then a very, very tough rehab to strengthen the leg and get it up to not just everyday standards, but Major League Baseball standards. Of course, SNY's cameras caught that conversation that was had between Francisco and Ronny on Saturday, and then Ronny hits one into absolute orbit, a 456-foot shot. The guy operating the high home camera didn't even see it. It wasn't even in the frame, and Ronny then steals a base on Saturday, flashing that 30-30 potential right there in a couple plate appearances, a couple more hits on Sunday. And Hunter, it looks like Ronny Mauricio, from the early returns, I know he struggled 0 for 10 his first 10 at-bats after his return, but Ronny Mauricio could be a huge part of this Mets lineup moving forward, a bat that a lot of prognosticators, when evaluating the Mets and the lineup, might not have been factoring in, a guy that can make a big difference, and you never have the platoon advantage when you're facing Ronny because he's a switch hitter, incredibly valuable, and he's done a really nice job at third base.
Yeah, we spoke about it last episode. He is so athletic. He's so toolsy. We know he hits the ball a million miles an hour. We know he can hit it, 1,000 feet like he did on Saturday. We know he's got a really strong arm, can steal bases, plays a pretty good third base. You could slot him in at second base. You could slot him in at shortstop if you want to take Francisco Lindor out because and just trying to keep that toe healthy. He's a really dynamic player. He does a lot of really good things on the baseball field. Every team is in a position where they could use an athlete like that. We see, I'm not comparing him by any means to Ellie De La Cruz or O'Neal Cruz, but those guys are just,
They're comparisons. Those are the comparisons, Hunter.
they're 6'6", 6'7". They hit the ball far, they hit the ball hard, and they play a pretty good defense and are just so toolsy. They're so athletic that it's like Ronny Mauricio has such a high ceiling because of his natural athletic ability. It's really encouraging to see his at-bats over the last couple of days. And just hopefully he continues to bring that energy, stealing those bases or even taking extra bases that other guys in the lineup might on a short single. He had a really good read today on the second run of the game where Alvey sort of lifted it gently into center field, softly into center field, and Mauricio broke right away, realizing that the center fielder wouldn't make the catch, and scored on probably what a lot of guys wouldn't on this team. He can be a game changer with his with his athletic ability. He's super exciting to watch. He's electric on the bases. It's just a really talented baseball player that the Mets have. And I think, we know Mendy knows how to get the most out of his players. I'm very excited to see what he'll be able to do with Mauricio.
And that's why this lineup can be such an absolute buzzsaw for opponents to go through, because you've got Lindor at the top of the lineup with his 6 leadoff home runs and, his OPS over 1,000 leading off games. And then Brandon Nimmo in the 2-hole and how good he's been since he's moved to the 2 spot. And Juan Soto in the 3-hole, his last 10 games, OPSing over 1,200, just constantly on base. And then the aforementioned, who we think should be the NL MVP in the 4-hole. And then whether it's Jeff McNeil in the 5-hole. And then a Mauricio who was hitting 9th on Saturday. How about Jared Young, who after Ryan McMahon ties the game on Saturday, comes right back, answers back immediately with an opposite field shot, his second home run as a New York Met. Starling Marte has been great for this Mets team. We just talked about Alvarez. Luis Torrens has come up with huge moments. He's been great with runners in scoring position. He had a big 2-run single to help blow that game open on Saturday night. So if you add Mauricio and the sheer raw power and the sheer strength with which the ball leaves his barrel, it truly is a nearly impossible lineup for visitors or opponents, I should say, to navigate. Ronny Mauricio, just another problem, another guy that other teams need to game plan for. So like we mentioned, this Mets lineup is just on fire right now. They hit 3 or more home runs in 5 of the 6 games against the Colorado Rockies. They hit 6 home runs on Sunday. It felt like an entire offense was really chipping in. Of course, it was done without Lindor and Nimmo on Sunday, but all weekend, the Mets offense contributed. You go back the whole road trip, that Wednesday game against the Dodgers where 1 through 4 in the lineup, they either scored or drove in all 6 runs. And then a night like Saturday where 8 and 9 in the lineup are hitting home runs, only the 4th time the Mets have had that happen in team history. But let's talk a little bit about the starting pitching now, because
Please.
As we all know, Coors Field, not an easy place to play whatsoever. And Kodai Senga faced the Rockies last Saturday. Never easy to face the same team 2 times in a row. Teams make adjustments. You'd think a team like the Rockies, seeing Senga for a second straight weekend, would say, hey, with 2 strikes, we know what he's trying to do here, right? He's going to throw the ghost fork. But it doesn't matter, because Kodai Senga's ghost fork is so deceptive that he was still able to strike out 7 Rockies over 6 innings of 1-run ball. Kodai Senga lowers his ERA even further, 1.59 now, leads the National League qualifiers in ERA. And Hunter, for me, the biggest statistic about Kodai Senga is the work that he has done when he's found himself in trouble. This season, he has an opponent's batting average of just 103 with runners in scoring position. So a lot has been made about the Mets struggles with runners in scoring position, but no one in baseball has been more effective at bearing down in jams than Kodai Senga. By the way, 3rd on that list was Saturday night starter Clay Holmes, who has held opponents to a 120 batting average with runners in scoring position. So the Mets starting staff as a whole has done a great job bending but not breaking, and no 2 better than Senga and Holmes at doing just that, Hunter.
Yeah. To piggyback off of that, Kodai Senga's 1.59 ERA, we mentioned, is the leader amongst qualifiers in the National League. That's about a half run lower than the next best, who is Paul Skeens, who's probably the Cy Young favorite going into the season.
Shout out Pirates, baby. Shout
Shout
out
out to the
Pirates.
Pirates. Raise it, John. I'm ready to raise it.
Raise the Jolly Roger.
Raising it? And
Greg Brown, KDKA.
And on top of that, there are 3 Mets pitchers in the top 12 of the National League when it comes to qualified pitchers and the ERA, their earned run average, right? Senga, we just mentioned, leads it. David Peterson, ace. He's got a 2.80 ERA. It's good for 7th in the National League. And Clay Holmes, as you mentioned, the 2.95 ERA, which is the 12th lowest in the National League. So, and that doesn't even include Griffin Canning, who we know has been stellar. That doesn't include Tyler McGill, who looked really good again. He got through 5 innings today. It's the starting pitching is driving this team. They have been driving this team all season, the pitching staff as a whole has been driving this team all season. And it's just, we can't say it enough, taking David Peterson from, struggling coming out of the bullpen, not really being consistent early in his career, to now putting together roughly a year's worth of starts, right? A full calendar year worth of starts. And he's been this way. He is unbelievable. Kodai Senga is right there amongst the league's best. Clay Holmes has a sub-3 ERA and, is just getting 6 innings, 1 run, 6 innings, 2 runs. He's 6 2/3, 2 runs. He's just been those 3 guys specifically have been so good for this team. And yeah, sure, it shows on the leaderboard, whatever you want to make of that. But the Mets are winning the games that they're pitching pretty consistently. It's really exciting. You got to have Mendoza's got to have a lot of confidence. Like, chalk it up for another 6 innings, 2 runs from this starter or this starter or this starter.
Yeah, these guys, I say it all the time here. At the Apple, I do not like the term ace. I am coming around, however.
What if we have 5, John? What if we have 5?
It really feels like that. And it's felt like that since the whole turnaround last year. Vito and I talked about this. I remember the Mets when they went to San Diego. It was late August last year, that road trip after the homestand in August. There was only one homestand in August last year, where it was apparent that every day the Mets were sending out a starting pitcher who was giving them the starting pitching advantage over the opponent, whether they were going up against the other team's number 1, which they were nullifying, or they were going up against the other team's number 5, which was a marked clear-cut advantage, because every guy in the Met rotation is the equivalent on some teams of a 1, a 2, 3 at worst. That's what this Mets rotation is working with, and that's what the Mets are throwing out each and every time they're playing a baseball game. Kodai Senga, when you watch him start now, he's taking the ball every 5th day at this point. You realize that they truly missed him last year. And I think that a lot of the struggles that they endured early in the season, had to do with not having him in the rotation, considering how dominant he was in his rookie season. That was not a fluke. This is who he is. He's obviously that much more comfortable pitching in North America, going on the road, pitching in different conditions. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, it was his first time ever pitching at Coors Field. I know Clay Holmes said this after Saturday's start, where you get around 75 pitches. And Clay Holmes, by the way, big boy, big man, athletic specimen. Even he was saying it kind of feels like you're at 100. I'll give a little personal anecdote here. I was in Denver about 3 weeks ago, went for a little run myself. I consider myself a decent runner if I can.
Athlete.
Let's say I'm ripping an 8-minute mile, right? In Denver, the lungs are burning. It is not the same, especially as you get further into either your little 2.5, 3 mile run for me, or your major league outing for Clay Holmes.
Is there a difference?
A little bit different. Different, but the same.
Yeah.
But for Kodai Senga, it is such a breath of fresh air to have him taking the ball consistently. You can rely on Kodai Senga each and every time he takes the ball to give you a quality outing and to just give your offense a chance to win a baseball game. That's all you can ask for. That's what this Mets rotation has done all season long. It's what it's done going back to last June. The Mets have the best record in all of baseball since June 1st of 2024. We know that Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea are back on the comeback trail. They're both making rehab starts. Montas just made a start for AAA Syracuse on Sunday. Manaea made his first rehab start for High A Brooklyn on Friday. Also want to mention Nolan McLean, who piggybacked off of Frankie Montas on Sunday, continues to dominate AAA hitters, and he's doing something you rarely see with a guy making the leap from AA to AAA and adjusting nearly seamlessly. And, he's doing well against left-handed hitters as well, which was one thing some people have a bit of concern about because the sweeper is not as effective to the lefty as it is the righty. But Nolan McLean is another guy to keep an eye on, a guy that could be making an impact at the major league level sooner rather than later. But for Senga, Holmes, and McGill, who was hitless through the first 4 innings, to do the jobs that they did in Colorado where, look, we get that the Rockies have 12 wins. We get they have a winning percentage under 200. We're aware of all this, but they've still got major league hitters on that team. That outfield is massive. If you've ever been to Coors Field, it is incredible to just see it for your very eyes, how much grass there is out there in that outfield. Obviously, the ball travels anywhere, as you heard Gary Cohen say, estimated 7% to 12% further with the thin air than at sea level. And for the Mets rotation to do the job it did, kudos to the trio of guys that started in Colorado. Just a different kind of challenge for any major league starting pitcher to deal with. And Senga, Holmes, and McGill did a great job. And another huge thing, Hunter, in this 3-game series, we know the Mets had to go to Brazoban and Diaz on Friday night, but by the Mets offense and the starting pitchers on Saturday and Sunday being able to really blow the games open and put those games out of reach, you did not have Edwin Diaz. You did not have Reed Garrett. You did not have Huascar Brazoban throw on Saturday or Sunday. Mets off day on Monday. We talked in the last episode how Mendy's hands were a bit tied with bullpen usage on Tuesday against the Dodgers, possibly cost the Mets a victory. Now everyone is refreshed as the Mets will play this homestand against the Nationals and Rays. So a great job by the offense and everyone involved to really just give the bullpen a much-needed rest. And, of course, a great job by Paul Blackburn, who earned a save, 4-inning save. Not something you see every day. Not something you see every day.
But, yeah, just can't say enough about this pitching staff so far this year. Can't say enough about the starting rotation, those 5-6 guys who have made starts. Can't say enough about the bullpen. Just keeping runners off base when there are runners on base, not letting them score. It's all really encouraging. They're not walking batters. They're striking out batters. They're filling up the zone. You can't say anything more about this pitching staff and what Hefner and Desi and the entire baseball ops team has done with this group of pitchers. It's just all I can say is it's really encouraging for the rest of the season.
And Clay Holmes, I mean, obviously the Mets taking a chance on Clay Holmes, who had been not just a reliever, a dominant reliever. Let's not downplay his accomplishments with the Yankees and the Pirates before that. But, he has dominant stuff, and now he's dominating over 6 innings instead of 1 inning, and he's doing it for us instead of them. So it's all good.
Yeah, he's so good. Why is he only pitching? Why would he only pitch 1 inning,
Another victory for this Mets front office. Really quickly, we have a couple of fan questions from members of the Mets Kids Club, which we're going to get to in a moment. But before we answer those questions, I want to quickly give my final thoughts on this 3-game series in Colorado. And it has nothing to do with anyone in the starting lineup or the starting rotations or the bullpens or anything like that. It doesn't have to do with national anthem stare downs, which Pete Alonso just add that to his list of accomplishments this weekend. But it has to do with a dinosaur who has jokes. Dinger the mascot on, I believe it was Friday night.
It was.
Held a sign up that said, "Mrs. Met, call me."
I don't think Mrs. Met would call him.
I know Mrs. Met, Hunter. I have her jersey. I have her jersey. She gave me one of her jerseys. Mrs. Met and I are very good friends.
I know.
First of all, Dinger.
Inappropriate.
Dinger. I'm gonna quote
That's a married woman,
What
Dinger.
was her name from Full House?
I don't know.
Michelle
Sure.
Tanner. You know Full
How
House, right,
rude.
Hunter?
Yeah.
Are we playing many moons ago?
No, I know Full House.
Hey, Dinger. How rude. That's
Yeah.
first and foremost. Second of all, how dare you? How dare you, Dinger? I understand it's not going well for your Colorado Rockies right now, but
John.
do not talk about or to Mrs. Met like that.
Yeah. You tell
Dinger,
him. That's a married woman, John.
it's a married woman. Have some respect, Dinger. You know, go find a dinosaur in the Lodo area. Lodo's a beautiful area. Lower downtown Denver is very, very nice. Denver's a great city. I'm sure there's plenty of dinosaurs. They found dinosaur eggs at the site over where they built Coors Field. Hence why Dinger is a dinosaur. Dinger, keep it to your own species. All right? Leave Mrs. Met out of it. Okay?
Yeah.
Never again, Dinger. Never again.
Yeah. Don't mess with her, dude. Otherwise, John's coming for you. John and Mrs. Met. Mrs. Met does like 35 push-ups in a row on the dugout during pitching changes. You want to mess with John and Mrs. Met like that?
You don't know how many push-ups I could do, Dinger. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, but
you should do them.
Well, it'll be tough with the camera angles. You know, we have the step and repeat behind us. So,
what about the fan questions?
The fan questions, yes. So for the first time on a Meet at the Apple episode, we put a call out for some Kids Club members to write in some questions, and we're going to answer them here on the show. And I'll bookmark this. I'll tag this, front tag, and back tag this with, if you have a question for myself or Hunter or Vito when he is back, you could send those questions to kidsclub@nymets.com. We see them, we field them, and we're going to answer them. So let's get right into it. The first is from Henry from Seaford, New York. Henry is 6 years old, and Henry wants to know, what role will Ronny Mauricio have the rest of the year? And I think it's a great question. Obviously, Ronny Mauricio made his 2025 MLB debut on this road trip. He'll be coming home for the first time. I'm actually really excited for Ronnie's first big league, MLB at bat of the season. His first at Citi Field in quite a while. I think Mets fans should give Ronny a big round of applause for the hard work he's put into getting back to this spot, and because he is a huge part of this Mets team moving forward. And Henry, I think that the Mets have a good problem, if you would. You know, there's no such thing as too much pitching. There's no such thing as too many good players. So obviously, Ronny Mauricio comes up when Mark Vientos gets hurt, goes on the injured list. We know that Mark Vientos is a great hitter in his own right, hit 27 home runs for the Mets last year, 5 in the playoffs, set the Mets single postseason RBI record. We know Brett Beatty is a very good player. He was arguably the Mets' best hitter in the month of May. He broke out of his slump with a big 2-run home run in Colorado on Sunday. I think what makes this so exciting is the fact that Ronny and Brett can both play a multitude of positions. Ronny can play short. Both of them can play second base and third base. You saw Ronny Mauricio DH on Sunday. And I think what we've seen from Carlos Mendoza when he fills out his lineup card is that he wants guys to stay sharp at different positions. He likes to move guys around, and he likes to also give guys a blow defensively. So I think that Ronny Mauricio, as long as he continues to hit, will stay in the lineup. Carlos Mendoza talked about this pregame, getting guys reps. Luis Angel Acuna is another example of that. It's important for these guys to play as often as they can. For Ronny, he's a switch hitter, so you don't have to really worry about the left-right game as much as you might with, say, a Beatty or a Vientos. Beatty getting more action against a right-handed pitcher, Vientos being more of a fixture in the lineup against the left-handed pitcher. But, you know, there's at bats for all these guys to go around. That's the beauty of the DH in the National League, is you have that spot as well. Jeff McNeil can play second base. He could play center field. He could play left field. He could play right field. He could play anywhere as well. And this is the key, the flexibility that guys like McNeil and Beatty and Mauricio present Carlos Mendoza to move things around based off of, as Mendy has said many times, including right here on this podcast, who the other team's starting pitcher is, what relievers they have in the bullpen, who is available for the other team coming out of the bullpen. These are all things that go into decisions when Carlos Mendoza is filling out his lineup card, but the Mets have so many great options. Ronny Mauricio is one of those many great options, Hunter. You agree with all that?
Yeah, and that's a good question for a 6-year-old.
It is. What kind of questions were you asking when you were 6?
I don't know. Can I
Daddy, are the Islanders going to sign John Tavares? No. All right, next question.
John, I was like a senior in high school when that happened.
Oh, sorry. Well, I mean, when he was drafted, maybe not.
I was at the draft party, and I'll probably be going to the draft party this year. I think that'll be a fun night at UBS.
Keep James Hagan's home, baby. All right. Let's see. We have another question. This one comes from Jonas from Whitestone, New York. Jonas is 9 years old. And Jonas wants to know something that I think many of us are wondering. Jonas wants to know why Francisco Lindor didn't make the All-Star team last year. And do we think he will make the All-Star team this year? So, Jonas, Hunter says he better. I think let's talk about last year first. I think, first of all, Francisco struggled early in the year last year, and I think that had a lot to do with it. As I mentioned, the lineup change that Mendy made that really sparked Francisco, moving him to the leadoff spot in the lineup was May 18th. His numbers were getting much healthier by the time All-Star game voting opened, but I think the slow start hurt him a little bit when it came to All-Star voting. And I think also that, sometimes fans just get a little complacent and assume that the stars are going to be voted for. But I think this year we've got a full court press when it comes to All-Star game voting. I mentioned it earlier with Pete when we were talking about him and his MVP candidacy, and I'll say it again. You guys got to vote. You could vote 5 times a day. Hunter's yelled at me every day to vote. I've been voting. You could vote 5 times a day. You don't have to redo your ballot. It's already there for you. You just resubmit it, which is awesome. I do miss the day of punch-out ballots back in the day at Shea Stadium. That might be out of many moons ago coming soon, but we'll see.
I definitely remember that. That was a lot of fun. I would grab, 18 of them and just punch out all the Mets.
In the box there. God knows where they went, but you at least felt like you were doing your baseball civic duty.
Yeah.
But I think that right now it's pretty clear. Going back to May of last season, all the huge moments Francisco had, whether it was breaking up Bowden Francis's no-hitter in the 9th inning or the iconic 2-run home run he hit in the 9th inning in Atlanta to help clinch a playoff spot, or not a regular season moment, but of course the grand slam he hit against Carlos Estevez to help send the Mets to the NLCS, and then all the huge moments he's had this year leading up to Friday night and the double and all the leadoff home runs and success, and he's having arguably the best season of his major league career to this point. He is pacing to break his single season home run high. He is playing incredible defense as he always does. He is a premier talent in this game. And I think it'd be a shame if the entire baseball world that on one warm Tuesday night in July focuses in on that one game, the national or the Major League Baseball All-Star game. It would be a shame if Francisco Lindor, who is the best shortstop in the sport, were not there representing the New York Mets for the National League. So, James, that is my answer to your question. Hunter, do you agree with Jonas, not James, Jonas, do you agree with what I had to say in response to Jonas's question?
I could not agree more. He deserves it. He deserved to be there last year. He deserved to be there in 23, and he deserved to be there in 22. Mets fans, let's make it happen this year. And if you want, John, at the end of this video, I will prove to you why. We put together a little highlight reel that went live on YouTube early on Sunday morning. One of the top corners, you will have the availability to, number one, vote for Lindor, and number two, watch some highlights as to why he deserves it. They're all there. He proves it every night. He, at shortstop, at the plate, he should be the National League starting shortstop for the All-Star game.
100%. So great question by Jonas. Our next question comes from Hannah from Los Angeles. Hannah's 11 years old, and Hannah wants to know, why are the Mets called the Mets? Who named them? And Hannah, it's a very good question. I was wondering that when I was younger as well. So first of all, a little off menu here. The blue and orange for the Mets comes from the now Los Angeles Dodgers, but what used to be the Brooklyn Dodgers, who wore blue, and the New York Giants, now San Francisco Giants, who wore orange. This NY, very similar to the NY that the New York Giants used to wear themselves. So that's where the colors come from. As for the name, so Joan Payson was the original owner of the Mets. And when the Mets became an entity, they were known as the New York Metropolitan Baseball Club Incorporated, but that wasn't their formal name. That was just basically for tax purposes what we were going to call them.
That was their business name.
And then Ms. Payson had to come up with an actual name. And there were 5 reasons why Joan Payson chose the Mets. First of all, it was acceptable to the public. It was short for Metropolitans, the metropolitan area. I think that's a pretty easy explanation. It was close to the corporation's name, which you want. You don't want 2 totally different things. It was descriptive of the area. She didn't want something random like Panthers or Wildcats or some other nonsense. It was short and easy, and it has a ring to it, right? Mets, one syllable, 4 words. You could put it on the back pages. It's not a whole long 3-syllable thing. Nice and easy. And also, it had some historical context. And Hunter, in doing some research, because I am like that when we are taking questions from our kids' club, Joan Payson considered the names Jets and Islanders for her baseball team before she wound up choosing Mets, which, might I add, a very good decision by Miss Payson. So I found that quite interesting. Obviously, those two names wind up being used by a couple other teams, and they're kind of in the circle because, Mets fans and Jets fans are generally the same. And I won't say the same for Islanders and Mets because there's a lot of us Ranger Met fans that,
That's
you know,
okay.
you
But
know.
I would say 2 other names that I'm fairly confident that were also in the running were the Avengers and the Empires, or the Empire,
Yes.
which
Yes.
I think love the Mets name. Either of those 2 names would have been really cool
You
also.
want Avengers, didn't you?
No, I didn't I mean, I wasn't alive to make the decision.
Yeah, but if you were alive, I see you as an Avengers guy.
I was just pointing out, I was just trying to add on to the conversation. I think that was a little tidbit of 2 cool names, honestly, that I thought if Mets didn't work out for whatever reason, I would have been New York Empires. That's pretty tough.
Pretty tough. All right, we got one more question. This one comes from Patrick from Rockville Center. I do not have an age for Patrick, but Patrick wants to know, who do you think our best cleanup hitter is? And, well, Patrick, I think that, we're at the 53-minute point of this episode, so Ty the guy is probably telling us to wrap it up. He's not in the room with us, so we can't see him saying wrap it up. But if you've listened to the first 53 minutes of this episode, I think Hunter and I have made it quite clear that Pete Alonso is the best cleanup hitter for this Mets team. And once again, it goes back to the tweak that Mendy made by inserting someone in the 2-hole, whether it be Marte at times or Nimmo, and moving everyone down a spot and lengthening this Mets lineup. And Pete Alonso has benefited from the guys in front of him. That's why Pete Alonso leads Major League Baseball in RBIs, because he continues to come up with runners on base and he continues to drive extra base hits. I believe he's tied with Shohei Ohtani for the Major League lead in that category. And when you deliver extra base hits with guys on base, you're going to be driving in runs. I mentioned the stat, Pete hitting home runs with guys on base, 1 or 2 shy of his total from last season. That's the Soto effect. Let's not forget Brandon Nimmo, for basically his entire big league career, has been an on-base machine. We've talked about Francisco Lindor's ability to get on base. All of these guys do the job night in and night out. And Pete Alonso can be a self-sustained offensive machine, or he can benefit and be even more productive when the guys around him. And this also goes for the bottom of the lineup. At times in the past, Tyrone Taylor getting on base earlier in the season when he was hitting in the 8-9 hole, getting on base, setting the table for Lindor and Soto and Alonso, turn the lineup over with guys on base, and even more damage gets done. But, Pete Alonso is doing stuff that we haven't seen since Mike Piazza, one of the most prolific power hitting anything, forget just catcher. I was going to say power hitting catcher, but just prolific power hitters in the history of the sport, and especially the Mets franchise. It feels like that. When Pete comes up, it's must-watch stuff. He's using the entire field like Mike Piazza did so eloquently, so brilliantly during his Hall of Fame career. And right now, Pete Alonso is as locked in as it gets. And I think that this lineup that the Mets are running out there each and every night, obviously with some tweaks, again, based on lefty-righty starter, based on relievers available, based on some factors that go into Mendy's decision-making, this lineup is as potent of a lineup as we have seen in quite some time. I think you could go all the way back to 2006 when you had the 2 Carloses and Jose Reyes hitting 19 home runs from the leadoff spot, and David Wright and Jose Valentin hitting 18 home runs from the number 8 spot. Obviously, these are the days where pitchers were hitting, which seems like a while ago now, although it's only been a couple of years. But this Mets lineup reminds me of that 06 lineup with how deep and how potent it is. And Pete Alonso is the perfect linchpin right in the middle of this incredible Mets lineup, Hunter.
I agree. You summed it up perfectly. He's the Mets' best power hitter. He drives the most runs. He's does it with runners in scoring position. He does it with 2 outs. He does it all the time. no better option, in my opinion, not that that means anything, for Pete to hit.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Hunter. Come on now.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said that Pete Alonso is one of the best power hitters for the Mets, and Pete Alonso is closing in on etching his name as the best numerically, statistically power hitter in the franchise's history. Like we mentioned, Pete just 9 shy of tying Darryl Strawberry's Mets all-time franchise home run record, 10 away from breaking it. Right now, it's looking like mid to late July is when Pete could have that historic swing. And, you know, I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago. Yes, it's not the single season home run record, and baseball records are cherished, right? Like, we love baseball and we love the history of the sport, and that's what makes this game so special. It's not like football, you know, like I think Drew Brees set the all-time touchdown pass record. No one really talked about it. It's not like when Barry Bonds broke the all-time home run record, surpassing Hank Aaron, or when Bonds broke the single season record, or before that, McGuire and Sosa, and the chase in 98 to break Roger Maris's single season home run record. And I was thinking about the Mets home run record and how it stacks up in New York history, right? You know, we saw Judge break the American League record, whatever that means. Some people want to say the non-steroid record. I don't love that because you can't really prove anything. We could speculate all we want. Also, let's not discredit Barry Bonds as probably the best player in the history of the sport. But, you know, I thought to myself about the Yankee all-time home run record. And I realized that record's never going to be touched. Like, no one is touching that record because it's owned by Babe Ruth. And you got to get to like 700 with the Yankees. And Judge, if Judge had come up at a younger age, I think that maybe there's a chance. But he went to college and he came up around what, age 24, age 25. Can he keep this up into his, you know, late 30s, possibly 40s? I'm not going to say no because he's a freak of nature. But the point I'm getting at is,
I just looked it quickly. He's not halfway to Babe Ruth.
Oh yeah, he's
It's,
not. He's in
Aaron-
all likelihood, he's not. It's not happening.
Aaron Judge is probably the greatest right-handed hitter we'll see in our lifetime. He's going to be right up.
Miguel Cabrera, Manny Ramirez might beg to differ, but you know, there's some story to be written still.
First of all, you're putting Manny Ramirez ahead of Albert Pujols is crazy.
Okay.
But as you know,
Albert, you're right. I'm a
be.
Manny guy. I love Manny.
I would Pujols, Miggy, and Judge, 3 greatest hitters, right-handed hitters in my lifetime for my money. But he's not halfway to Babe Ruth. And this is a Mets podcast, so I don't know why I'm getting all energized about this.
Yeah.
But just Aaron Judge is that good, and he's not halfway to Babe Ruth yet.
Well, the point I was making is in New York baseball history, and especially recent, you know, first of all, New York's a baseball town. I get the Jets and Giants are huge, and obviously we just saw the way the Knicks captured the attention of the city, but it's a baseball town. We have not had a franchise's home run record broken really ever. I mean, Strawberry hit 252 with the Mets, and then he left and he went to LA. There was no like big moment where he broke the record and a big countdown, a big buildup to it. For, you know, Babe Ruth, he hit 714 home runs. Like, yeah. You know, he just did it. I mean, I know he hit some with the Red Sox, I guess. I don't know how many off the top of my head Ruth hit as a Yankee. But when Pete does this is going to be the first time we are seeing a franchise's home run record fall. And I don't think that we should understate the importance of that in New York baseball history, which is just really cool. Like, when the moment happens, it's not just some other record. This is going to be a huge moment for Pete and for this Mets franchise. I hope Darryl's there. I'm really excited for it because it's something that we don't see very often. And after Pete, knock on wood, takes over the record, who knows who's next in line? It could be Juan Soto, obviously. Juan's going to be here for a very long time. Hopefully Pete's here for his entire career. But this is going to be a very special moment and a rare moment, which is really the point I'm trying to make is in New York, the Yankees, we've not seen it with them. We're probably never going to see it with them because Ruth, thanks, Babe. And because, you know, we haven't seen this record fall for the Mets. David Wright, like I mentioned, could have done it. Obviously, if the back injuries didn't prematurely end his career. Mike Piazza, you know, hit 230 something home runs as a Met, 232, I think it was. 230, somewhere around there. 220. It was 220. It was 220. But not 252. So it's going to be a really special moment, a really special day if and when Pete Alonso does eventually surpass Darryl Strawberry and become the Mets all-time home run king. And that date is coming quicker and quicker because Pete Alonso is knocking home runs out of the yard what feels like every single day. He hits 2 on Sunday, helping the Mets sweep the Colorado Rockies. The Mets rolling 18 games over 500, an off day on Monday. The Mets return to Citi Field on Tuesday. They open up a 3-game set against the Washington Nationals. These two teams meeting for the second time this season. They split a 4-game set in D.C. at the end of April. And the probables for this series, it'll be Mackenzie Gore, who always gives the Mets trouble, against Griffin Canning on Tuesday. Cole Irvin, who's pitched well against the Mets, against David Peterson on Wednesday. And good Canadian boy Mike Soroka against Kodai Senga on a Thursday afternoon. Then the Mets welcome the Rays to town for a 3-game set. So the Mets coming home for a 6-game series. They will look to keep it rolling. And Mets fans are going to see a pretty familiar face right smack dab in the middle of that Washington lineup. Ahmed Rosario hit 3rd for the Nationals on Sunday afternoon, Hunter.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I hope Ahmed's having a good year. I was, loved watching him play as a Met. Hopefully he catches a couple of losses here this week. That'd be nice. But yeah, no, really excited for this homestand. Quick little sidebar, this homestand, not to keep it dragging on, Ty. There's going to be a return of some Citi Field concession item. So do with that what you will.
Can you share, or is this a secret?
I think it's a secret.
Okay, well then why'd you mention it?
Well, because I wanted to get people like, oh, what could that be?
Hunter likes a little intrigue, and I like that about Hunter.
Thanks, John.
I like that,
yeah,
Hunter. Intrigue is good.
Yeah. It's maybe something that went pretty viral in the last pretty recently for the food that was at Citi Field. So that's all I'll say about that. But back for this homestand. And just excited for 35,000, 40,000 people at Citi Field all week.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Obviously, Citi Field, the place to be all summer long, setting up for a very, very fun summer in Queens. The boys rocking and rolling, 18 games, over 500. What can you say? It feels like the Mets have been doing this all season long. Just really kind of the cream of the crop in Major League Baseball. So that's really all I think we have to say. I have one more thing to say before we wrap this bad boy up.
Please.
And that is that you guys got to head out to your local PC Richard & Son right now. Maybe drop what you're doing and go. There's locations all over the Tri-State area, and you got to get to your local PC Richard & Son. I know the Mets are coming home, but after this homestand, they go back on the road. They go to Philly, and after that, Atlanta, or Atlanta, then Philly. I flipped that. Yep. And you want to watch the Mets in the best conditions possible, big screen TV, surround sound, maybe a little projector action. And if you're in the market, if you're going to take me up on that, make sure you do yourself a favor and get to your local PC Richard & Son, where they've got the absolute best prices, the friendliest staff. They're the most knowledgeable staff, and they've got whatever you need, whether it's TVs, appliances, mattresses, washer, dryer, headphones, video game consoles. The Switch 2 just came out, I know. I bought myself a Switch 1 about 2 years ago, so I'm gonna chill on the Switch 2 because I don't know the last time I played a video game, honestly. I buy all these games, and I don't play them. You can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to get College Football 26, and I'm going to binge it for about 7 whole days, and then I'll probably never play it again. But you know where I'm going to get it from? Local PC Richard & Son. They've got it all, and they've been doing it since 1909, the best in the business. So make sure you check them out for all your needs. We, once again, are thrilled by the performance by the Mets this weekend in Colorado. The Mets go 5-2 on this 7-game road trip. They take care. They win all 6 games against the Colorado Rockies, and now they're coming back home to Citi Field. Make sure you're there. Check out Mets.com/tickets. We got a big week coming up. We got K-pop night on Tuesday, Pride night on Friday, and of course, celebrate Dad. Bring him out to the ballpark on Sunday. Make those memories, guys. That is what it ultimately is all about. Rooting for the Mets with Dad. You don't want to pass upon the opportunity. Trust me. Thank you for listening. You can follow this podcast on Apple, Spotify. You can check it out visually if you're a visual learner on the Mets YouTube page. You can see Hunter's smiling face, that nice background. You can see this beautiful step and repeat behind me. Shout out PC Richard & Son. You can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram at JMB9191. You can follow Hunter at Hunter Taubes. And Hunter, I believe you want me to remind the people that they could check out previous episodes of Meet at the Apple. They can also vote for the All-Star game, which is incredibly important. You guys just heard one of our loyal Kids Club members asking why Francisco Lindor wasn't an All-Star last year. I don't want that question again. Let's make Francisco an All-Star this year. Hunter, what else are we plugging here before we go?
And you can subscribe to the Mets on YouTube.
You can subscribe to the Mets on YouTube. Inside the Diamond coming out. A lot of incredible content by the Mets content team, giving you behind the scenes, up close looks that most teams just don't give you, which is awesome. The New York Mets have it all going on right now, baby. So we thank you for listening. We thank you for watching. The Mets roll against the Rockies. They're coming back home for 3 against the Nationals, and we will be right here to break it all down for you when it's all said and done. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching, and we will meet you next time at the Apple.